Y'all, Wizard 101 just changed a bunch of stats and level 170s looking kind of fierce. Today, we need to talk about the level 170 stat caps that have made their way to Live Realm. Now, these have changed multiple times in Test Realm, so I assume there's a lot of confusion, so I wanted to talk about exactly how the game's gonna change. And you should definitely care about stat maxes. They affect how you PvP, they affect how you make stats work for, you know, PvE with high damage setup. And the stat maxes that are in the game right now are completely brand new. We didn't even see these in Test Realm. I assume the reason they changed so much from Test Realm is because they were taking our feedback into account, but these are like really insane. So to start off, if you're only into PvE, the big magic number now is 235. So right now I'm running max damage without using any of the new Wallaroo jewels. This is my PvE setup on the Fire. And for Fire, you can get damage jewels that give you extra damage up to 10% for any school. So to make the highest damage setup before there's any sort of cutoff in PvE, I'd want to hit 235. According to one of the devs that works on this game, this is apparently the intersection point. So what that means is if you're trying to go for a super high damage setup, you want to hit 235 damage. And then after that, any more damage will actually experience a drop off. It's very similar to that 220 number that we had in level 160. Now, they also said that the limit is actually 255, which I assume means that if you were to get 255 damage, like total, you can do that by giving up a bunch of Pierce jewels, for example, and replacing them with Circle jewels. And 255 would not be a hard number to actually hit with all these Circle jewels, but you would experience a loss of damage. It's probably not worth it. What I think is actually probably going to be a pretty cool setup to run is you can give up those like boons and, you know, like small little damage talents that you have on full damage pets, and you can replace them with Proof and Defy, and actually have a little bit of tank ability to your like highest damage setups. I actually kind of like where they put this, you know, intersection, because you could actually balance damage and resist, and that way more tanky schools can lean into that a little bit more. More damage heavy schools are just gonna go crazy on damage and just do better, you know, like, so I do think it's good. I feel like you are gonna want to use jewels if you're going to want to hit max damage in PvE. I wasn't sure up to this point if Circle jewels were going to count into the stat maxes, and that's a big deal, right? If they count, then the stat max can be a lot higher because Circle jewels add a lot of damage. So it does look like they're going that direction. Now, advanced content and PvP, it gets very, very exciting. Now, what you see on your screen right now is a table of all of the new stat maxes for advanced content. Now, this is outside of PvE. This is PvP and raids. And I would argue that there's three big stories here. Let's start with the brand new one. Pierce is now allowed to be a lot higher than we're used to. I'm on the highest Pierce school right now, which is Fire, and this is a setup that I would have run, you know, at a given point in the meta, right? 56 Pierce in the previous meta. This is with the Pierce talent on my pet, high Pierce gear, and also obviously full Pierce jewels. And even with all of that, I didn't hit the previous stat max of 57. Now the new stat max for Fire is 62. I think this is huge because what this means to me is that if you want to hit the max Pierce for your school, you're probably not going to want to stop at 3 Pierce jewels. You're going to want to get maybe an amulet that gives a Circle jewel, maybe a deck that gives a Circle jewel, and you're going to want to go maybe with 4, especially if you're a high Pierce school. The advanced combat damage caps are also pretty high. For Fire, for example, it used to be 174. It is now 192. That's an 18 damage increase, when the only gear that we've actually gotten added into the game are the new rings and the Athames. Those are the only things added that actually add damage. And these don't add a lot. They add about 2 each for Fire, which means that they're actually giving you room with the new damage jewels for your own school to actually increase your damage proportionally more than what you had before. This is all a fancy way of saying is the meta is more offensive. There's more access to damage and Pierce for your main school than before. I'm gonna be honest, when I saw the fact that they were adding square sockets that gave this much outgoing, square sockets that gave this much HP, I was kind of like, yo, like, what's going on, bro? Like, is this game just gonna go crazy? Even though it might seem like a crazy increase in offense, let's not forget that there's also quite a bit of defense. If you're like a healing school, or if you're even like a high health school, your health and heal ability is about to skyrocket. So it looks like every school is getting a meaningful buff. It's not just defense-oriented buffs now. It's actually every school getting something, and it's pretty exciting. Keep in mind that flat resist is also apparently just not a thing in PvP right now. Apparently, even if you run it and you go into queue, you will not experience the benefits of this. So really, you're going to see a little bit more offense in that aspect as well. You know, like lower pip hits are still going to do damage. Things that like, you know, are overtimes like Elephant are going to be like totally new spells now. So while there is a crazy amount of offensive shift. There's no way to know with all these things changing if it's too much or too little even now. What's also kind of nuts is that they seem to have removed wards from affecting the stat maxes for resist on your school. So the resist, if you notice on the table, it's actually a lot lower. Ice is the only one that even is able to hit 80 resist now in PvP. Now I'll say this, 55 resist for like fire, for example, it's kind of low. I don't even have a brace jewel on and I can hit it pretty damn easily. But considering fire can get 62 pierce and 192 damage, I'm not sure it's gonna matter. It's just gonna be that fire is gonna rely more on its offense than its defense. What seems to be happening, if I had to guess, is that they're kind of finding a middle ground between adding too much damage, because these jewels give so much more damage and you can affix so many more of them, and also making the meta so crazy like offensive that like no one else can compete other than offensive school. A fire or a storm or even a mitt, they can't just ward with their super offensive stats and call it a game. What I would argue is that there's going to be a lot more play and counterplay than we've had before, and maybe even room to, like, you know, actually try and use strategies. It doesn't just have to be one strategy fits all, one ward pet fits all. I think something that's super underrated about the resist change is you don't need to ward on your pets anymore, which means you can put stuff like mighty on your pets, you can put off school damage, you can put will cast, you can put accuracy. So I think pets are officially way more diverse just off of the resist change. What the resist change also means for pets, which I think is something to celebrate, is now instead of needing, like, you know, maybe for fire, right? You would have needed pretty much this exact pet if you wanted to PvP. Now instead of that, you only need 4 of these 6 talents, 2 resist talents, a dealer and a breaker, and the other 2 talents, maybe they're fail talents, maybe they're not as good, maybe they're whatever. That doesn't mean you just can't PvP at anything resembling a competitive level, right? These wards were so oppressive that they were also a gigantic barrier of entry, and I'm really happy that at least temporarily, it seems, we're not going to see these affect the meta as negatively as they have. My thoughts on this, it seems like Pierce is the big buff here. Obviously, damage also seems to be something that you have more access to. And what that means is we might actually get a small break from what was a very defense setting and ward and brace heavy meta in PvP. In PvE, just the fact that they put the intersection point for when damage starts to drop off so high means that you have a lot of diverse builds that you can make. High damage with high resist, high damage with glass cannon identity. There's a lot of stuff to do this update, so hopefully this was helpful. I assume they're not going to change the stat maxes that much more now that this is live realm, so I would refer to this if you want to see what you're maxed out at if you're doing PvP or PvE. If there's any changes, I'll let y'all know. Turn on the noties. It's looking like a dope-ass update. Let me know what else y'all want to see. I have tons of videos that I'm going to be making, but if y'all want anything Wallaroo related that you want me to make a video on, let me know. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think of these stat maxes. And if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah.